Welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. James Kincaid alongside Professor Chris Davis. Just got done talking about the season finale of Loki, but now let's talk about going to the movies. Yeah. Open one.
To the movies. Here we
go.
To the movies.
Back to the cinema. It's been a long time for me since this pandemic. I actually was racking my brain trying to think of when the last time I went to a movie before the pandemic hit, and I'm not sure. It could have been Endgame. I don't know.
Wow.
Which came out first, Endgame or Joker? I don't remember, but it's possible that it was one of those two. So
I don't know how you did that. I mean, I was going to the movies for a while now.
Yeah, you were going all throughout the pandemic.
I was having a lovely time.
All right, ain't no breaking your stride, Davis. Kudos to you. I missed the movies though, and so it was good to go back. We talked about on a different Best Damn Nerd Show video on our YouTube channel, which, by the way, check out our YouTube channel, Best Damn Nerd Show. Talking about Marvel's little propaganda video that they put out about returning to the movies and stuff like that. And I mean, it was a terrific piece of propaganda, and I love going to the movies. And as much as things are changing with, the streaming services and stuff like that, there's nothing like it. It doesn't compare. Unless you have even if you have the really sort of baller home theater setup and stuff like that, it's still no comparison. So I chose Black Widow as my glorious return to the movies. Because I'm borrowing somebody else's Disney Plus account, and I didn't want to have them pay for it for Disney. But so that's how I chose to make my return, and how I chose to view Black Widow, which we'll be getting into momentarily. Davis, how'd you take in Black Widow?
Well, I sure as hell wasn't going to go to the theater, because guess what? I was not very hyped on this movie. So that wasn't going to happen.
Why do you hate everything?
I'm not a big fan of Black Widow, and honestly, after seeing a lot of propaganda.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to cancel anyone from this show, Chris Davis is the one that body shamed Scarlett Johansson.
She's a fatty. Back in the day. Not now, because she has body problems.
So you weren't interested in going to the theater to see this?
No, and if I was going to go to the theater right now, I'd go see Quiet Place 2. And see it in one of the smaller that's been out for a few weeks. I would really love to see that in theaters. However, when it came to this, I had to use a good old streaming service that I won't name. And however, I have a VPN, and I love using a VPN because I like my security. I like my password. But apparently, the streaming service I use does not allow your own VPN. They have their own VPN. And so I just went for it without a VPN, and I'm hoping
just went in raw, baby.
I'm hoping the mouse does not come for your Davis here. So if I'm not on for a while, you might know why.
Hey, Davis, they'll come for me before they come for you. Don't worry.
And no, I was very distraught by that because I paid some good money for this VPN, and I got to figure that out. But that said, I got it to work, and I watched it, and here we go.
Yeah, here we go indeed. Black Widow, after, the pandemic and the delays. By the way, I'm jealous that you saw New Mutants in the theaters, because if I'd had my druthers, that would be the movie, because that's a terrific movie.
Yeah, and the visuals in that movie, much better in the theater than close up on a TV screen. I will say that. It just resonated better. I think that, especially the Demon Bear.
I enjoyed it, watching it. What was on HBO Max now or something like that? But I enjoyed watching it at home. But we're here to talk about Black Widow. Your overall thoughts on Black Widow before we dive into the details.
It's a lot of question to me. It's one word question. It's why. And I think it's a contract. They had one more movie with Scar, and they just said they wanted to do it. This held no water for me going into it. We know that she's already dead. However, with knowing how Loki ended that we just talked about, this could also mean something else if they wanted to. They could have this go a lot of different ways. And so watching Loki first and then this, it actually maybe made it a little bit better in my eyes, but it's still just a why. It was just meh. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't good. It was just a meh movie. Like, it was kind of entertaining. There's some good stuff about it. We'll get into it. But overall, it was just like, nobody's going to remember this movie ever.
Well, that's I think a lot of the MCU recency bias is that the newest one's always the best one until the next one comes out, and then when the next one comes out, everybody forgets about what just happened. So I definitely agree with you that this is forgettable in that same factory fashion that they have devolved into. The why, I think, it was sort of a make good, I think, to ScarJo almost, for the fact that this is the sort of the first female-led superhero movie that Marvel should have done, where it was Black Widow, not Captain Marvel.
Yeah, it should have been.
Yeah, it's what it should have been. And so I think there's an element of that. I think, would this have played better for you in terms of expectation and why, if it had come out where it fell in the timeline, which is directly after Civil War?
Same movie?
Same movie. No. But if it was released after Civil War in chronology of where it's happening, where you don't know that Black Widow is dead,
you might get a quarter star more from me.
Okay.
Maybe. That's just where this movie fell.
Spoiler alert, everyone! Black Widow dead.
she go.
She doesn't die in this movie, although I will grant you that knowing that from the get-go does, even though I know they're not going to kill the character, but it just sucks any sort of drama out of the room when you do it that way.
And when you do that, there's all these action scenes that are very big that I don't think need to be. We'll get into this more, but there's huge action scenes in this movie, and for the character of Black Widow, I don't really want that. I want the small espionage. I want the spy work. That's what I want. And we started with that, and we'll get there, but it just ended up being this big cinematic thing, and I wish it wasn't.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think that this movie started off pretty strong, pretty decent for sure. I liked the opening. I think that we could have dived way deeper into the Red Room and stuff like that. This movie, you're right. It should be a tactical espionage, to borrow from Metal Gear Solid, tactical espionage action is what this movie should have been.
Give her a cardboard box. Who cares? Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Move her around. But that's what this movie should have been, and there's a lot of different ways that they could have gone with it as well here, and where you'd have to fiddle with where you put this in the timeline of things, but certainly still doable. This should have been a Black Widow and Winter Soldier movie, because those two characters are very similar with their past and everything. You could have had that and their style.
You're making me melt.
You could intertwine the two and what they're trying to take down. They both are trying to regain their sense of self and control and things like that. And the Black Widow and Winter Soldier comic books that I read were similar in that regard and played off very well. Those characters, you could do a Black Widow and Hawkeye movie as well. And I think that would have played even better in a certain sense, because in the MCU, Black Widow and Hawkeye had so much to do with one another. I know they revisit Budapest here in the movie, but if you could do that, if this is maybe even more of a prequel or what have you, with Black Widow and Clint and the whole Budapest mission and stuff like that, there's a lot more meat that you could have done as a movie with either of those two other characters in tow than what we got here, which just felt like one big retcon, which was Florence Pugh's character, who I thought was the best part of the movie, I thought she stole the show in many respects.
Agreed.
In an overall bad movie. But it's the Rogue One thing that I had a problem with. If those characters live, if you don't die, we would have heard of you. So why haven't we fucking heard of you before? Like that, it felt so shoehorned, retconned in that with her character though. It didn't ring true because we'd never heard of her. The Nat that we got in the MCU wouldn't really have done the stuff without her. It just didn't ring true at all when you look at it in the broader spectrum of what Black Widow has been in the MCU and stuff like that. Yeah. Also, you're right. Once again, going to the sort of street level espionage violence that this movie should have been. It should have been dark. It should have been gritty. It should have been bloody at times, and it wasn't. It was, again, I don't go to laugh, and this movie was quintessential I don't go to laugh. There was so much awful MCU comedy overdrive in this. It's ridiculous. Way too much. Especially oh, go ahead.
No, it was, this is one of the first times it was very jarring to me, was that there were so many moments that could have held a lot of gravity, a lot of emotional gravity, that one more line, one more movement even just would have been deeper and would have felt more, but instead they just cap it off with a one-liner, and it's just like, oh, okay, that's where we are, and it sucks because it's this character has so much potential with the espionage type. Like, if you want a Mission Impossible, Jason Bourne, that's where we were in the first third of this movie.
Yeah,
that's where we were going, and I was like, "This is great. This is fantastic." The opening was great. The credits, the music, the tone, the smaller scale action, the dialogue. That was all there, and they lost it so quick.
Yeah, and it turned into a rehash of other MCU movies, most notably Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
There were some shot-for-shot lifts from Winter Soldier, only using Taskmaster, which, by the way, atrociously done. Taskmaster, just awful. And it's not just the gender bend. It's the spoiler alert, everybody. Again, pause your Zunes or other non-brand MP3 playing devices. But it's the lack of impact from the reveal of who Taskmaster is, hilariously bad. The fact that it is not a character at all. This Taskmaster is closer to Bane from Batman and Robin than it is to Taskmaster in the comics. It was just a mindless, like, nothing.
I will go Deadpool.
Oh, that's a great
Wolverine.
Call. Yes, that's a fantastic call.
I mean, Deadpool is the mouth, so obviously he should be talking. So it's not as drastic as that. But guess what? Taskmaster needs to talk. He needs to quip. She needs to quip. Whatever.
It's a he, but and he almost took on all of the Avengers in his first appearance. Took him to task, as it were, and was not able to do it. No, this usage of Taskmaster was terrible. Just what a waste. And in a point where I feel like we're beyond just attaching a name to a character just to say that one is in the movie. You could have been better than that. Invent another character if you have to. The villains in this movie in general was a huge weak point. And I don't think that I'm the only one that felt like Dreykov was just communist Harvey Weinstein. Like that's what I was picking up the entire time. As he's barely in the movie, and then when they're in the office, like, is he gonna start asking her to watch? Like, what's going on here? Was not a fan.
Heavy sex traffic vibes, for sure, and that's what they were trying.
Which I mean is fine, but. Again, the portrayal of him was borderline on out of date parody.
Yeah. It probably wasn't from when it was shot, though. like 8 years ago.
This was not shot 8 years ago.
No, I know. It felt like it, though.
It was not shot 8 years ago. And no, it doesn't make up for her being inexplicably blonde to close out her Black Widow career, which is still stupid. But just the way too much comedy. And I'm glad that you can sort of see their need to punctuate a scene instead of letting you feel the emotion, punctuating a scene with a needless joke. Like, look no further than any time the Red Guardian said almost anything or did anything when they're at the house and the people, Dracov's people, show up, and it's comically the Tranks going into him. Like, right down to the sound effect and him going down like a log was awful. Red Guardian is one of the very worst on-screen characters in the history of the MCU. He was a just communist Homer Simpson in an MCU, and I love The Simpsons, but I didn't need Homer Simpson in my Black Widow movie whatsoever. And also, like, just the complete tonal whiplash, to borrow a term from Mark Abrigo, of when we see him at the start of the movie versus how he's just a complete dullard when we rescue him from prison. Like, what was that? Is he an entirely different person?
Like, how adept is he supposed to actually be? Because
seriously, he's a complete buffoon.
Yeah, because if we're supposed to believe that he could go toe to toe at one point in his life, I granted he is older, he is fatter, but that he could go toe to toe with Captain America.
But he was lying about that anyway.
No, I know, but let's just say that's what we're supposed to believe. No.
Although they could be alluding to a 90s Cap that was created, or an 80s Cap too, which is kind of cool.
Right. Which is, also could be like the whole Loki thing now, which is, okay, maybe he fought him in that multiverse, That's what I'm saying, is like there's so much they could be saying now. But it's just, I wanted him to do so much more in this movie, that I wanted him to actually have a real battle with Taskmaster. I wanted him to actually go and like actually do something, and he didn't do shit. It was terrible.
It was awful. And we talked a little bit about this off air, but I want to also bring up again the too much comedy syndrome, and also just the tone and tenor of this movie, because you're talking about the sex trafficking vibes. Yes, absolutely. And those vibes are there in the comic too. What happens in the Red Room and the brainwashing and all that stuff, it's horrific. And it should be, and we should feel those things, and we should be mortified by them. However, but no better example of how awful what happens to them is than when they are talking about forced hysterectomies, involuntary removal of a woman's reproductive organs. And instead of that being a very dark, very sad moment for us to sort of meditate on how awful this was and how ashamed Red Guardian should be of subjecting his surrogate daughters to this fate, even though they weren't his real daughters. I'm aware of that. Still, it's horrific. Instead, it is delivered in an extremely flippant, comedic way by Florence Pugh and Scarlett Johansson and whatever his face from Stranger Things, Red Guardian. It was terrible. I'm not offended, but I wouldn't blame people that were.
I actually I had told you I thought it was hilarious. It was actually one of like the genuine moments I was like awkward, just dying laughing, because of she just kept going, and that's what my friends and I do, is just like we'll draw it out and we'll see how long it takes you to just get disgusted. And to me, that is somebody dealing with tragedy in a way.
You're giving
that
them
they
way
can
too much
cope.
credit.
No. Possibly am, but in a way that they can cope with it. Like, this happens. Like, okay, yeah, no, this is how I can joke about. This is how I get by. But I will say maybe Red Guardian should have acted a little bit more harshly towards that. So, but
Exactamundo, my friend, because in that
her delivery was great though.
But it was awful. But let's say, for the sake of argument, you're giving them way too much credit that that's how she's coping with it. It is the responsibility of the filmmaker, the scriptwriter, the actor, whomever. In that moment, then it's like, yes, Red Guardian needs to have a much more serious reaction to that and be like, look, what was done to you was monstrous. Because make no mistake about it, that is a monstrous, vile act. And it just was completely destroyed by this MCU desire for one-liners and for pathetic grasps at laughs.
Yeah, and they built that on themselves because what they built Red Guardian in to be.
Homer Simpson.
Right. And he just doesn't understand the little nuances to that, and it's just like, okay.
How? He was a top-level operative.
Somehow.
Undercover for multiple years. Undercover.
He seemed pretty competent in the opening.
It looked like he was a scientist. Yeah, absolutely. And then that guy disappears. Fucks off for the rest of the movie.
21 years in prison might do that to you.
Rachel Weisz, however you say her name.
Mummy.
Mommy Widow.
The Mummy.
Yes, the Mummy. But also the Mommy
Remember
Black
that movie?
Widow.
The
Yeah,
Mummy?
I do. Yeah, it was fun.
The
Well, maybe we'll talk about it sometime, Brent. I prefer the Boris Karloff original, but I digress. That's a whole different conversation for another time. Rachel Weisz was fine. Good actress. I got a little bit of a problem with the fact that she's essentially responsible for the mind control that all of the young Black Widows are under. She's torturing animals, and there is no sort of moral redemption to her character other than she just decides to betray Dreykov, yet there's no sort of acknowledgement of her sins. That's a character that is destined to do a redemptive sacrifice because she's borderline irredeemable for what she has done. And they address none of that in the movie.
Which I thought they did at one point when she blew up the engine.
No, that wasn't her. That was Florence Pugh.
No. That was her.
Oh, when she shut it down. When she was shutting it down. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she shut it down.
Florence Pugh's the one that...
She shot the engine out when she was surrounded, so I thought she was like sacrificing herself.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then she lives.
Yeah. No, you're right. Now that should have been the moment.
Nothing means anything here.
That should have been the moment because again, there's no arc with her where she shows remorse. It's just all of a sudden they Ocean's 11 us.
I might just choke a pig out real quick. Don't worry about it.
Dude, for real.
I was like, stop choking a pig out, man. That did nothing to you.
It's absurd.
So
there's no redemption with her. She just changes sides. It's ridiculous.
I felt so much for that. I probably felt more for that pig than any character in this movie.
That had the most tension in the movie because that was the most fucked up thing that we saw because she's choking out a pig. She cut off its oxygen with mind control, which is absurd. But I mean, it's a comic book movie. But that had the most tension. Yeah, that's the character with no moral redemption whatsoever.
Yep.
So that was another issue that I had. Other than it just being, ripping off Winter Soldier left and right down to the crashing station in the sky.
The air station in the sky was like, I wanted
Cloud City.
I wanted to turn it off at that point. I'm like, no, really? This is where we're going. We're doing this. We're getting this ridiculous with it. And I should have known just from watching the trailer, but it's so stupid. It's just so stupid. Like, give me an espionage movie. You have the perfect character for it. Like, get away from your Marvel bullshit.
Where was this guy when we were talking about Loki? I love this guy.
Just because it makes sense with this character. Like, I love Mission Impossible 1. I love the Jason Bourne, and you could have did that.
You could have done both of those movies. You could have. You're absolutely right.
And
absolutely right.
It's so sad because she has such high potential for a great story. And if I was her, I would be effing pissed, man. I'd be
absolutely
so pissed.
because look, she toughed it out, man. She you know, she was a good soldier, and she deserved better than this being her movie.
Yeah,
you know,
and honestly, the only reason this movie was made is for Florence Pugh to be introduced in the next phase. That was the only. I feel like you watch this movie, it holds nothing. In phase 1, it meant nothing. You could not watch it. You could watch that last scene after the credits and be like, "Oh, okay, she's in this now." That's what we're doing.
How about the friend-zoned arms dealer too? What a terrible, like, nothing character that was.
But he's in the friend zone, man.
Yeah, just stupid character though.
How about Taskmaster? Are we gonna tackle that?
Yeah, Taskmaster. Which, by the way, I mean, you made a great point in terms of comparing him to Deadpool from Wolverine Origins. That's a great comparison. That's what this character was. It was nothing like the comics or video game. They could have done a way better job of the whole mimicry thing. And they just didn't. And so they're trying to rip off Winter Soldier, right? And it's like supposed to be Black Widow needs to save this character or whatever, because it's Dreykov's blown up daughter that she blew up, even though Dreykov was fine, but she got all messed up and makes no sense. But there's no emotional attachment here because, again, like, the hashtag "it's all connected," a lot of times the emotion works because it is all connected, and you're calling back to things from before, and you're layering in emotion and things of that nature, which is why Endgame was so incredibly powerful emotionally. There's no emotional impact here with Taskmaster and Black Widow because this is the first we've gotten. We didn't even see Dreykov's daughter, but for like a half a second before she got blowed up. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Which is why if half this movie was a flashback to the Budapest mission and then half took place in the current timeline with Nat and Clint, or even just Nat and everything like that, I think the impact would have been much more there. But there was nothing for either of the villains for us to really care. They didn't do a good enough job. They should have shown more of the Red Room, more of the training, more of the brainwashing. More of that. Well, what did you think of Taskmaster, other than it was just a shitty Deadpool?
I outside of the very first fight scene on the bridge, which I thought
was lifted directly from Winter Soldier.
100%. But I will say, like, they did the mimicry, the kind of like mask, like tone for tone. That was cool, and they like, I thought they could have stuck with that, and they didn't. It just kind of went haywire from there. Like, Taskmaster was put in a cell for the same move probably every Widow does ever, and the first move they learn somehow got taken down and was put.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just forget that. And now they're on the ground after this crash.
Dude, wait, hold on. Before you go to the crash, the falling through the fucking sky fight was so bad. Like, you have henchmen that are falling to their deaths and still trying to shoot at the main characters. I mean, they must have gotten paid top dollar for that. My goodness. And just
I'm going out on top.
Dude, the absurdity of, like, we wait. Like, I started laughing in the theater. Like, this is, I guess, MCU comedy at its best. Is we go through the whole dog and pony show of Nat getting the parachute to Florence Pugh's character, Elena, or whatever her name is, new Black Widow, and then just so comically flying through the air is, here comes lame Taskmaster. So now this is the fight. It was just so ridiculously stupid, so bad.
They get on the ground and she's not doing anything different. I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. She's gonna do something new. You know, she's gonna, like, take a different fighting stance. She's gonna do some, but they don't even revisit that. It's just, there's nothing to it. They're just fighting. I'm like, wait, but I thought he was, like, this expert at what she does, and he's studied everything, so he knows. Oh, okay. No, but there was nothing. I thought there was going to be, like, some like what they could have done was had that be like the facial reveal, and it's actually the sister, and then that's why she beat him, because he was going off what he thought this person thought like compared to them.
Yeah, it would have been very like Mission Impossible too. But...
Yeah, but it's like, but like, give me a fucking reason. Like this is ridiculous. Like it meant nothing.
Yeah,
and it was such a throwaway. And most of the action, the last 2/3 of the movie was green screen. It was so bad.
There's just Michael Bay would be so proud of this movie. Because there's like back-to-back scenes where Florence Pugh, Black Widow, big explosion behind her hero shot, and then same thing with ScarJo. Like there was so much of just needless explosions all over the place. The only action and fight that I really thought was really good was this sort of Jason Bourne-esque fight between Black Widow and Florence Pugh in Budapest in the apartment. That was the best fight of the whole movie. That was good. And I really do want to praise Florence Pugh because she did really well in this movie. She was a cool character, like retconned and shoehorned in, absolutely. But in a vacuum, in this movie, she was good.
Yeah, and I will love to see what she does next in the.
I will probably not, but I hope for the best for her.
Well, I'll say this: I have high hopes for the storylines. I have for her acting capabilities. I think it could only help whatever shitty movie they're writing for her.
I mean, I'm a fan of her, so I hope the best. Watch Fighting with My Family if you haven't seen it. It's very good.
What's that? It's the horror movie in like Denmark. Summerland.
Midsummer.
Watch that.
I've seen it. Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's a good.
Fucking bullshit ending.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, it's a good movie, but the level to which the divide along certain lines of how people see that ending and who deserved what, extremely telling. Extremely telling.
Hey, this October we're talking.
I'm down. I'm down. I want to talk about the dumbest line of the whole movie, and that is with Dreykov's character, and he's James Bond villain giving his little spiel about everything. And this, I legitimately laughed out loud, started chuckling in the movie theater. I heard some people behind me talking about why I was laughing, but this fucking line was so awful. He's unveiling his whole plan, and he says that he's going to take advantage of the one natural resource that the world has too much of. Yes, you already know. The one natural resource that the world has too much of. Little girls. Are you fucking kidding me, bro? MCU, you just wrote your greatest joke. That's a wrap. Call it. Holy Lord.
It wasn't little girls. It was just girls.
No, I think he said little girls. Because I got strong Gigi vibes. Maurice Chevalier, thank heaven for little girls. So bad, dude.
I was like, is that why she was watching the Bond movie in the beginning? Because they knew that they were going to do that terrible dialogue at the end?
I mean, I like the fact that she's watching a Bond movie. I would have gone with the Sean Connery one, but
it really fit at the end. It was like,
oh, for certain. I did like, and I want to give credit where credit is due, the callback to "Thanks for your cooperation." You know, like she did with when Loki was a good villain in Avengers. And elsewhere, I thought that was good. I thought overall ScarJo is good. I wish she had a more glorious and not so inglorious end to her character with this movie. But yeah, the one natural resource that the world has too much of, Mr. Bond, little girls.
She barely felt like she barely even felt like a lead in her own movie though. Like that was the thing.
Wow! That sounds familiar. Who else maybe didn't feel like a lead in his own show?
It was leading to season
Loki.
Wow. But it is his own show because it's him, but as a variant.
No, she's terrifying. She's good. I suck. Anyway. Little girls.
Little girl.
The one natural resource that we have too much of. Little girls. Also, he was in the movie for like 5 total minutes.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, I mean that makes a movie tough, is when your antagonist is somebody that needs to be hidden the whole movie. It makes it hard.
We could have been, the thing is, he didn't need to, because we could have been seeing more of the indoctrination, more of what was going on in the Red Room, which, by the way, I think is the most compelling part of what could have been the most compelling part of this story. Again, going back to the horrific atrocities that they are subjected to. Like, that's where the heart of this film could come into it. That's where you get the buy-in from the audience. Like, I might not have seen this character before, but this guy needs to be stopped. And how tragic what happened to Nat, how tragic what happened to Florence Pugh. They didn't hammer that home enough.
Maybe show what they were doing.
And they let the Goebbels to Dreykov's Hitler off completely scot-free. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they did.
It's awful.
Just show a little bit of what they were doing to him,
So, yeah, that's why the montage thing at the beginning was good. Not like that, Davis. Come on. God. For those of you only listening, Davis gave me a very, very creepy look.
Huh?
Didn't like it. Didn't like it.
You gotta see what Florence was talking about there.
No. Absolutely awful. All right. Anything else to say? I mean, I think the worst part about this movie is absolutely Red Guardian, which sucks to say because I like Hopper, and I expected better from him.
I don't think it's him. I think it's what they told him to do.
Hard for me to separate at this point.
No, he's a good actor, and
he is a good actor.
Rachel Weisz, honestly, the actors they have in this, it was good casting. It was just bad writing.
It was, yeah. What a waste of a good cast. Very well said.
Yeah, because they very well cast. This was a great cast.
Yeah,
and they wrote they wrote him out of it.
I also really enjoy seeing William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross every time. I just enjoy him quite a bit. Reload. So it's always nice for him to pop up. But yeah, just ultimately an inglorious end to Scarlett Johansson's tenure as the character of Black Widow. The post-credit scene with Madame Hydra and Florence Pugh now going to be going after Clint Barton. Also, that was another scene. That's a perfect example of Marvel not letting you feel anything without punctuating with a joke, because we have Florence Pugh weeping over Nat's grave, and it's very sad and somber, and then Elaine Bennis comes in to ruin it. Because that's who she was, and that's who she was in that moment.
I thought she was going to have like a big salad with her.
A big salad. I thought she was going to be doing the little kicks.
Oh, yeah, her dance moves.
She would have been there with her, but she stopped for jujubes on the way to the gravesite.
And you know what I wanted, actually, in that last scene? And I thought we were going to get, I really did. Like, I thought, I was like, I'm reading into this because it seems too obvious, is that she whistled, she put her head on the grave.
Yeah.
Gravestone, and I thought we'd hear a whistle.
Yeah.
And that would make so many questions and so much behind what could be with what just happened in Loki and all this. And
sometimes dead is better.
They failed. They just failed everywhere.
But you're right. I mean, this movie, essentially the only lasting impact is the vehicle to get Florence Pugh's Black Widow off the ground and her going after Clint Barton, Hawkeye. Yeah. Just a lot of miss, but a lot of fun tearing it down with you.
Yeah, no, that was great.
It was great to be on the same side. So
we still have fun with it. We don't have to always be on opposite sides.
No, yeah, exactly. But
where's your rating with this?
Man, I hadn't even considered that. God. I mean, I'm thinking about we didn't even talk about the stupid ass Avalanche prison rescue scene. Just God, that was bad.
I don't think we need to.
Also, the fact that old ass helicopter that they were just complaining about getting absolutely riddled with high velocity ammunition.
There's 50,
like no problem.
50 cows going in it.
Just we had just been complaining about what a piece of shit that thing was. And it's just taking it on the chin.
She's just walking through the helicopter like nothing's happening.
Awful. And then, manages to navigate successfully through a ridiculous avalanche. Rating, I don't know. In terms of MCU movies, it's better than Captain Marvel. God.
You can't do that.
I don't know. I guess I give it a boosh.
A boosh.
A boosh.
Okay. I'll go
boosh and a half, maybe. I don't know. The comedy was so bad in this. Like, Red Guardian was such an atrocious character. Like, one of the absolute worst characters in the history of the MCU was in this movie. So it's hard for me to really give it anything. I'd probably have to watch it again to give it an honest rating.
Yeah. No, I mean, from
the first 30 minutes of it were solid, though.
Well, then that's why I get a couple stars on my because it could have went somewhere.
I mean, this movie died in the avalanche, though. It got buried in shit.
Buried in the cold of Russia. My sliding scale broke into full controllers here. I'm gonna go 3 broken controllers, so about a 30% there.
Okay. All right. Davis has spoken. I have spoken. It's fun being back in the movies, though. So thank you, Marvel, for that.
Yeah, so thanks for ruining that experience.
Either way, it was going to be Disney for me going back, because I thought my return to the movies was going to be Jungle Cruise, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which, by the way, I am extremely excited for Jungle Cruise. That movie looks like a ton of fun to me. So we'll be talking about that soon, I'm sure. Hey, come on, man. Maybe we'll go see it together. Anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll wrap things up on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show.